Hey, welcome! Today we're going to pull back the curtain on the hidden wiring behind our greatest fears, especially when it comes to money and power. We're going to figure out why the exact same leadership decision can either forge a team of steel or shatter it into a million pieces. Okay, let's just dive right in with the scenario that I'm sure feels familiar. A manager has to make a tough call, a 10% pay cut across the board. In one department, the team tightens their belts. They respect the move, they get it. But in another department, it's a total meltdown. Trust is gone, chaos erupts, and your best people are suddenly very busy on LinkedIn. Same action, totally opposite results. So, what's going on here? Well, the answer, the key that really unlocks this whole mystery, it all starts with a single, incredibly revealing number. It's a tiny clue from a huge global study that directly connects the way we think to the things we're most afraid of. And here it is, plus 0.1032. Now, I know it just looks like a random number on a screen, right? But this comes from a massive study of over 4,300 people in 109 countries. This number represents a statistically significant correlation. That's just a fancy way of saying the connection it reveals is real. It's not just random chance. And what it connects, well, that's the whole story. So what this number does is link a specific way of thinking with a very specific fear. We're using a framework that codes different worldviews with colors. The one we're looking at here is the red mindset. Think of this as a worldview that's all about power, taking immediate action, and making your mark. This number shows a direct, measurable link. The more someone thinks and acts from this red perspective, the more terrified they are of losing their savings. And this is the crucial part. For this mindset, this isn't about your 401k or planning for a rainy day. Not at all. Savings are a direct one-to-one measure of your power in the world. It's your ability to make things happen. So losing that money isn't just an inconvenience. It feels like being disarmed. You're vulnerable. Your savings are your ammunition, not a safety cushion. And you see this perspective out in the real world all the time. I mean, this quote from 50 Cent nails it perfectly. When he lost a fortune, he didn't talk about the financial inconvenience. He talked about losing power, about becoming just another guy. It's a fear of losing your autonomy, your edge. But here's the thing, it's not just about power. The red mindset is only one piece of a much bigger puzzle. It turns out, the data shows that other ways of thinking come with completely different hierarchies of what people are afraid of. Okay, let's break this down. This table shows how different mindsets fear totally different things. We've talked about the red mindset's fear of poverty, which is really a fear of powerlessness. But look at the yellow mindset. These are people who value logic and systems. Their biggest fear? Arbitrary authority, rules that make absolutely no sense. Now check this out. Look at the turquoise mindset. It's focused on holistic, big picture thinking. See that negative number? That means they have the lowest fear of losing a job, probably because their identity just isn't wrapped up in their title. And this difference is where you get what some people call a Tower of Babel situation in companies. Imagine this. Leadership is running on red and orange thinking. They're all about power and achievement. So they say, we need to win at all costs. Crush the competition. But their team might value blue order and yellow logic. And all they hear is, this is chaos, this is reckless, this is incompetent. Everyone's speaking a completely different psychological language. So that leads to a pretty huge question, right? If everyone is wired so differently and we all fear different things, how on earth is a leader supposed to predict how anything they do is actually going to land with their team? Well, the key is to stop guessing and start using this psychological map as an actual predictive tool. We can take all these correlations we've been looking at and use them to model the human ripple effect of any decision before it ever happens. Think of it like a predictive prism. It's pretty straightforward. First, an action goes in, the input. Let's say reduce staff. That action is then filtered through what we know about the team's psychological DNA, that whole matrix of fears. The model then analyzes the likely chain reaction, and what pops out on the other side is the predicted ripple effect. You'll see the obvious things, like fear spiking and trust dropping, but it can also reveal unexpected stuff, like a sudden rise in ageism as people feel more threatened. All right, so let's bring it all home. We're going to take this predictive lens and finally solve that mystery from the beginning. Why do two teams have such wildly different reactions to the exact same decision? This is where it all just clicks into place. Look at the action, mandate unpaid vacation. For a team with a strong purple or tribal mindset, people who value group safety, this is seen as a shared sacrifice, a ritual to save the tribe. Same for the community-focused green mindset. They'll accept it to protect their colleagues. But For an orange, achievement-driven team, it's a massive negative. To them, it's an inefficient roadblock that grinds their momentum and their career to a halt. Same action, completely opposite meaning. So the mystery is solved. Here's the bottom line. The outcome of a decision doesn't really depend on the decision itself. It was never about the action. It's about the psychological profile of the people on the receiving end. The context, their mindset, is everything.
Okay, so what does this all mean for you? This isn't just some interesting theory to talk about. This is a practical, powerful toolkit for becoming a smarter and, frankly, more empathetic leader.
So here's your new leadership toolkit. First, segment your communication. Stop talking to everyone the same way. Speak the language of order for blue and the language of achievement for orange. Second, you have to know your own profile. What's the gap between what you fear and what your team fears? And finally, reframe your arguments to connect with what your audience truly values. The biggest takeaway? Just stop assuming everyone thinks and fears the same way you do.
And that leaves us with one final, kind of mind-bending thought to chew on. We've seen how data can make these invisible patterns of human fear visible. But if empathy can be computed, if an algorithm can start to decode our conscience, what does it truly mean to lead? Where does the data end and our own judgment begin? Thanks for digging into this with me.